G'day there guys, it's Connie here again. Hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I hope you're enjoying the new intros. I got to be honest, it's a little bit hard coming up with fresh things all the time, but I'm trying my best. Anyway, like and subscribe and all that, and let's jump straight into the Reddit stories. Alrighty guys, this time we're on the Raised by Narcissists subreddit. It was written by user It's Everly Bear, and it's titled, My motherly aunt wants me to give up my unborn baby girl to my godly infertile cousin. I, 24 female, am currently 8 months pregnant with a baby girl, and my aunt/cousin have been giving me trouble since I've announced the news. My partner and I already adore our girl and have no plans to give her up, but my aunt wants me to give up my child to my cousin, who has been suffering from infertility for the past 5 years. For more context, my aunt has raised my sister and I as a motherly figure after our mother passed away when we were very young. We have been quite close with our aunt and cousin throughout our life and have been trying to support my cousin through her struggles with her infertility. My aunt is also very religious, being a Mormon who regularly attends church and has a very rigid, close-minded view on morality and values and living a good life. She believes that a child deserves a strong, foundational religious upbringing with a strong providing father and a loving, attentive mother. Since my partner is not Christian and because we both have full-time jobs and careers, she believes that my child will grow up confused and misguided in our household due to our religious differences, lacking a proper sense of identity and adequate care. She says she fears that our child's well-being will not be put first in such an environment and that our kid could likely go down a dark, immoral path. According to her, my cousin, who works part-time from home, and her husband are way better able to provide my child with a loving home with good values and religion. I have both my aunt and cousin blocked on most forms of communication, and I've moved to a new home where they don't know the address. My partner and I also got married in a private ceremony, so they won't have control over my medical decisions. Out of the two, my aunt has been more aggressive towards me, and even showed up to my old apartment one day to scream and argue with me about the situation. She, in a fake nice tone, tried to get me to come with her to a cafe near the church to speak with me about the baby, even when I told her there is nothing to be discussed and that I'm keeping the baby. I spoke with the apartment manager and had to hide until she left about half an hour later. My aunt also has her church friends after me. They sometimes regularly send me hostile text messages and voicemails. My cousin has been on the quieter side towards me and has been struggling with depression and trauma from her latest pregnancy last year, ending in a stillbirth of her baby girl after preterm labour at 30 weeks. She's been regularly posting on social media and has joined motherhood-related groups. I've heard through gossip that she's trying to get a baby through those groups and has been banned from a considerable amount of them to her dismay. She had been harassing young mums and widows for their babies. My cousin is desperate for a baby to fix her family and is apparently waiting for me to give birth. For my baby girl, who she apparently sees her own late baby in. My aunt and her are apparently sure that I'll be overwhelmed with my decision and the responsibilities with motherhood, that I'll give up or give more to my baby by letting my cousin and her husband adopt her. My aunt says that giving my baby to my cousin shouldn't be as hard as it could be because we are family, and that I could have a baby later on as I'm still young and have plans to attend grad school after working for a while. My cousin also apparently wants to get into contact as we had before my pregnancy. I will not be speaking to her again until after I give birth to see where she is then and to prevent further stress during my pregnancy. I've been very supportive of her through her infertility journey and generally liked her more than my aunt growing up, but her behaviour and thinking have shocked me and are making me fear for my safety. I'm planning a big wedding party for next year since my partner and I privately got married this year, and I'm not sure if my cousin and aunt would be invited and able to come. I have a lot of family support from both sides right now, apart from those who are close to them and on their side, but I'm not sure if that support will be as strong in a year and what my relationship with my aunt and cousin will be then. I've skipped some family events that I know they'll be at, but I don't want to miss out on those family gatherings and fun forever. I'm not sure how the future will look with my aunt and cousin after my baby and the issues that arise with that. Any support would be appreciated. Oh my god, that's scary. I've heard of situations like this quite a bit, and they very rarely get better once the child's born. This has got to be something that's handled ASAP, I think. Let's go to the comments. Please start a paper trail and report any harassment from them to police. This isn't some minor family issue. This is way out of line and could get worse if they're allowed anywhere near you and your baby. I say this as someone who has lost a pregnancy. The way you've described how your cousin views your baby is unhinged. There is no wrong way to grieve, but this is not grief. This is a pair of people who are not mentally well. This is not an issue to take lightly. This is a threat on your family's well-being. They sound extremely desperate, and desperate people do desperate things, dangerous things, like kidnap people's child type of things. I'm not trying to scare you, but your concern over wanting to attend family events and being curious whether you'll be able to invite them to your wedding party should be the last thing on your mind. These people sound extremely dangerous, and given the opportunity, they will take your daughter whether you agree or not. You need to keep a paper trail and report them to protect your daughter, yourself, and your family. I've had 2 early miscarriages, a loss at 21 weeks and 16 weeks. I have a son now and a baby, potentially 2, on the way. I'd never in a billion years act as either your aunt or cousin has, and I'm familiar with that level of grief. They are not only going after your daughter, but other people's as well. Does that really sound sane to you? They are completely unhinged. Stop treating them like family. They are now dangerous people who you should feel you absolutely don't recognize anymore. Please protect yourselves. That's your baby, and your baby alone. Get law enforcement involved if you have to. Get restraining orders if you have to. If you ever do talk to your aunt or cousin again, remind them how there are plenty of other babies in your area that are waiting to be adopted. Best of luck, and congratulations. Opie replies, Thanks. Regarding adoption, I don't think my cousin would be a great adoptive mother, so I would rather not encourage her on that. Based on what I know, she only wants a baby girl right now, and the baby has to be like her, aka white and have whiter features, and must not have any issues. She does not want to deal with or involve the birth mother and pretty much wants to act like the adoption never happened. Her mentality tells me she is only adopting for selfish reasons and does not want to make the adoption the beautiful thing it can be for everyone involved. Although I'm not giving her my baby, I'm hypothetically concerned of how she would treat me and try to alienate me from any relationship with the child if I were in that position. Please, whatever you do, do not allow your aunt or your cousin to be anywhere near your child. Don't allow them to hold your child. Do not ever allow them to babysit your child, because your child will disappear. If at all possible in the future, maybe consider moving out of that city. Make sure that you have cameras set up around your house, even if they don't know where you live now. There's always a chance that they could follow you home from work. Be hyper vigilant. Congratulations on the soon-to-be birth of your little one. Opie replies, My partner and I have moved out of the city and into a new home recently. My aunt and cousin have become aware of this but don't know the address. I didn't think much of being followed home from work, but since they don't know where I live anymore, they may try something at my workplace. I'll have to talk about this more with my co-workers and boss and alert them sternly. Opie comments on the religion and where she stands at with her beliefs. I was raised a Mormon, and my aunt has always been pushing the religion and all of its components onto me and my sister. Now, we're both not very religious and do not regularly attend church. I still believe in Jesus, but I'm definitely not near what my aunt is and wants me to be in religion. She says she's disappointed with me on that and is using my lack of devotion to say that my baby will be even worse off than me and go down the wrong path if I'm like this with a Mormon upbringing. Okay, Opie makes an update. This will be a small update. We got in contact with the local church leader and talked to them about the situation with my aunt and cousin, who are both active members. We talked to him for a while. He initially dismissed my concerns as personal conflict between family and tried to refer us over to counselling services. We explained to him that my cousin is dealing with trauma for her baby's death and that she is having false hopes about adopting my baby, which would be raised in a good home. We also told him that my aunt is feeding into those hopes and has been harassing me on her behalf, causing disturbance and a lot of stress. He told me he understood my side and that he knew what my cousin has been going through with her inability to have kids. He said he would contact my aunt and cousin to see what they have to say about the situation. I talked again with him today. He said that my aunt and cousin would like to speak with me and that they were concerned that I stopped communicating with them, especially since I moved away. I explained to him that their behaviour regarding my baby influenced me to do those things and pressed him on what they said. He said that my cousin had talked with the church therapist and was looking into adoption to start a family because her IVF treatments were likely not going to produce a child with her condition. I emphasized to him that I was not giving up my baby and that my cousin had been thinking such. He said that he understood that and started asking me for personal details on how I was doing now. He was again trying to set up a meeting between us and my aunt and cousin and referring us to services. I told him I was not comfortable with that at the moment, and he told me to at least call my cousin once. He said he'll meet with my aunt on Sunday since I was too scared to do on my own. Our call ended after that. I'll comment any update on what he says in the coming days under this post. Edit, I'm not satisfied with his response and do not like that he's putting pressure on me with reconnecting with my aunt and cousin. He says he understands my concerns, but I think he's being rather dismissive of them and trying to force us to resolve our issues. My partner and I thought it was worth a shot reaching out to him because he has influence and religious authority over my aunt and cousin. I'll see what he says on the next phone call and see what I can do to make him care more. Edit, to make it clear, I didn't give him any personal information and have no plans for any in-person meeting with my aunt and cousin. We are in contact with legal help. We do not live in Utah. OP comments on the church leader not believing her and how he's helping her and her husband. That may be why he's trying to refer us over to church counselling. He says he'll talk to my aunt and I'll just play along and see what he and they say after that. After this, I'm not sure how helpful involving the stake president will be and if I want to pursue that. Our church leadership has a reputation on focusing on what benefits them and often pivot to that, even if they initially side with you and try to help. My aunt and cousin are rather wealthy, so their tithe is probably worth enough for him to firmly favour them. One comment says, 100% a trap, yikes. Plus, the way the church leader dismissed OP as being too scared was extremely condescending and manipulative. What a scummy way for him to behave. F that guy. OP says, that comment really upset me after I told him everything that was going on and my fears. I'm not just too scared. I fear for the safety and well-being of my family. I fear for the possible escalations, my cousin and aunt's expectations and actions, and more. These fears are real and are very valid given the circumstances. That really bothered me. One commenter says, why are you even risking it? He'll get your address and then pass it on to your aunt. They may try to follow you back home after that meeting to know where you live. Possibly find out other details too, like your hospital address from the church leader, and they can get there with the excuse of checking on you and get your baby. I've heard of real cases where they took the newborn baby to another state from the hospital itself, so it will be harder for the police to track them down. Please don't associate with them any longer. Not the church, and not your auntie and cousin either. Don't risk your baby being kidnapped. You're the one who will suffer at the end. Trust me, the church won't be able to help you if things go wrong. If it's possible, move somewhere as far as you can for the sake of your baby's safety. Opie replies, we talked with him over the phone and have no plans right now for any in-person meetings. Okay, Opie makes a new update. We spoke again with the bishop. He said that there isn't much he can personally do to resolve the situation within his capacity between me and my aunt and cousin, other than referring to cancelling services. I asked him if he did meet with my aunt, and he said he did. Their conversation was apparently focused on my cousin and helping her heal. He told me my cousin was also grieving the loss of communication with me and my sister, who hasn't been talking much to her anymore. I told him that my cousin was trying to take my baby to replace hers, and that her and my aunt's behaviour was threatening the safety and well-being of me and my family. I think he was losing interest in the conversation, so he just told me to do whatever I feel is best for my family, but to consider the grief my cousin has been through and contact family counselling services for further help on this matter. Me and my partner sent him an email afterwards with a copy to our lawyer to close off communication. I decided to unblock my cousin and send her a message. I told her that my partner and I are keeping our baby and that is not up for discussion. I encouraged her to seek proper therapy if she hasn't already done so, and told her that I'm not comfortable with her, her husband, or my aunt being involved in the child's life. She hasn't responded yet. Regardless of what she says, our relationship will not return to as it was before, and she will not be a part of my child's life. Yeah, good idea. I think I'd do the same thing if I was OP. And yeah, I don't think I'd be going to any meetings that bishop sets up. Sounds like he's trying to manipulate her as well. Why is it that so often church counsellors do the opposite of what their job actually entails, and are often unhelpful and even threatening sometimes? It's just a shame because vulnerable people and people in need go to these places for help, and so often are taken advantage of. Anyway, I'd love to hear your opinions about this one. Let me know in the comments. Alrighty guys, on to another story. Okay, this next one was originally posted on the adoption subreddit. It was written by a now deleted account, and it's titled, Conflicted. Biological child reached out, but I don't want to be found. And just a quick trigger warning for you guys, there's assault, incest, stalking and harassment, and all that stuff. I don't know if this is the right place, but I've exhausted other means of support. When I was 12, I suffered a short period of horrible abuse from a distant relative and ended up pregnant. My religious parents were adamant about choosing life while maintaining their crystal clear image in the community, and I was sent to live with my grandmother for my 7th grade year. I ended up giving birth a few weeks after my 13th birthday, and immediately place-handled the child over to her adoptive parents, who at the time seemed like wonderful people. The only people who ever knew of my pregnancy in my life, aside from authorities and medical personnel, were my parents, my grandmother, one of my brothers, and my therapist. My husband is also aware. I'm now 32. I've been married to the man of my dreams for 2 years, and pregnant with what will be our first children together. We lucked out with twins as we required IVF to conceive. It took me the rest of my childhood and the better part of my 20s to get over what happened to me. I finally was able to heal, put it past me, and now for the past 5 years or so, I'm able to go months at a time without thinking about it. I had a closed adoption. I made it clear to the adoptive parents I wanted absolutely no contact whatsoever, and I never held the baby I gave away, something I do not regret to this day. I have avoided ever having social media, partially to avoid being found. In the beginning of September, I received a phone call from a PI letting me know my biological daughter wanted to meet me and had hired him to track me down. I immediately made it clear I have no interest in contact and to please leave me alone. By the end of November, I had received multiple phone calls and letters from my biological daughter begging me to meet her. I wrote her a letter in return, telling her I'm happy she's had a great life, but that I have no interest in contact. I made it clear I will not stop her at all from reaching out to extended family. I won't be mad if she outs me as her biological mother and pursues a relationship with my relatives. She did reach out to my brother, who immediately blocked her on Facebook. I would prefer she didn't, but I don't think it's my place to keep her from doing so. On Tuesday, she showed up at my front door while I was at work. My husband answered and immediately told her to please leave, or he would have to call the police. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to explain to her in any other way that I do not want to meet her. I also don't want to be cruel. I don't view her as my daughter, as horrible as that sounds. I do wish her the best, but I've built a life I'm finally comfortable with. I don't want her to be a part of it. If there is any insight any adoptees could provide on how I could explain this to her without having to be just brutally honest and also sparing her feelings, or birth mums who have gone through a similar thing. Whew, yeah, this is way out of my pay grade, and I'm okay with saying that. Let's go to some comments. Opie replies to one saying, I ended up writing her another letter explaining how she was conceived, how many years it took for me to finally feel like a human being again, and how my unwillingness to meet her has nothing to do with her personally, and everything to do with needing to preserve my own mental health. I asked that she please leave myself and the one brother who she reached out to alone. I again stressed I would not stop her from reaching out to extended family, and I included a packet of information about our medical family history and some watercolour pictures that my grandmother and I made together when I was pregnant with her. Yeah, you'd have to think that Opie's daughter would be old enough to understand the trauma that would be associated with her and her birth. One comment says, Question, did her adoptive parents know about the circumstances of her conception? Opie says her parents were made aware by my parents about details surrounding her conception before the adoption took place. One comment says, While I don't condone her behaviour, do try to understand what forces would drive someone to behave that way. What you and your husband are doing is, to put it very bluntly, a cruelty. It's understandable, but no less cruel. It makes sense that you don't view her as your daughter, but it also makes sense that she might seek to know who she is by knowing you. As an adopted kid growing up, I wondered endlessly about who I was, and I felt like the only way to get a sense of it was to track down biological relatives, which I did do, and funny enough, I experienced a little bit of what you described doing to her. It more or less worked out for me. She's a 19-year-old woman who just wants to know who she is. It actually may be healing for you also to erase the trauma of what you went through at 13 and giving up the child then by replacing it with this new person whom you may find you relate to as a peer rather than your child. You may see her more as a younger sister, and that may actually be a great relationship for the two of you. The best situation I could see happening would be for you to welcome her interest and accept her as a legitimate part of your life and family, for you and your husband to get over your resistance to the fact that she exists. I know my own birth mother's husband had to deal with this to a degree. Resisting her will actually just make things more unpleasant and have them linger, like the second shoe that never drops, while dropping the resistance may be the most peaceful path to her leaving on her own, or better yet, co-creating the kind of relationship that works for everyone involved. Obviously, as an adopted kid, I'm going to advocate for other adopted kids getting whatever they can to gain some closure about their own adoption experience. Adoption is itself traumatic, and it echoes throughout life. I think it would do both of you a world of good to hop on a phone together and for you to explain what your resistance is about. Opie replies, "Nothing will erase the trauma I went through at 12 and 13 years old. In the span of a little over a year, I went from a little girl who still played with Barbies to being forced to go through the extremely traumatic birth of an unwanted child. She is welcome to be a part of the lives and family of my extended family. Someday when my own children are grown, they are free to know and love her. For my own life, I choose not to have her as a part of it. As painful as it is, she is a physical reminder of the worst events that have ever happened to myself and my brother. Telling me it may be healing for me or erase my abuse to get to know her is in a way condescending. At no point did I attempt to make a claim that I know her trauma, nor will I ever trivialize it. I will never know the loss she feels, or the pain and unique trauma that comes along with being an adoptee. I won't claim to know what's best for her to heal, or any other person. I wish her nothing but the best, but I won't be hopping on the phone with her anytime soon. I won't pretend to know your trauma. Don't pretend to know mine. I wish you and your family happiness and health. Adoption is challenging, and it seems often tragic for many parties involved." Another comment says, "Threatening to have your daughter arrested because she wants to meet you seems a bit excessive." Opie replies, "A woman who is a stranger to my husband showed up at our front door demanding to see his wife, me, in the middle of a pandemic while I'm 26 weeks pregnant with our first child. She was shouting, demanding to see me, and he calmly told her to leave, or he would get the police involved. I don't think he acted out of line or in excess." The commenter replies again, "You didn't say that in your original post. All you wrote was, 'On Tuesday she showed up at my front door while I was at work. My husband answered and immediately told her to please leave, or you'd have to call the police.'" Opie replies, "At the time it didn't seem necessary to say. She, a stranger that I expressed I did not want any contact with, presumably drove across state lines to come to my home while I'm knowingly pregnant during a pandemic to see me. I am sympathetic to everything she's going through, but it was extremely unsettling for my husband, and I don't blame him at all. He's understandably protective of me." One comment says, "It's unsettling to see so many people refer to this 19-year-old girl as some malicious woman, including OP. She's a child, and she is acting like one." Opie says, "At no point did I make her out to be a malicious woman. She is definitely young, and I understand that that is part of where her lack of impulse control comes from. I've given her as much of an explanation as I'm willing to. I hope that she finds peace and closure in whatever she is looking for. Now that I've made her aware of the details surrounding her conception, I hope she can understand better why I make the choices I'm making. I am someone who places a lot of value in having my space and boundaries respected. I don't feel I owe her anything. I was a child myself when she was born, and we're both victims of the same man who forced us into this situation. I do not view her as my daughter, and I do not view myself as her mother. I think we are two people biologically tied as parent and offspring, and tied by a series of extremely traumatic events that we had no choices in. I did not feel familial kinship for her while I was forced to keep an unwanted pregnancy, and I did not feel familial kinship for her when I was forced through a traumatic birth, and to be brutally honest, I do not feel familial kinship towards her now. I wish her well, and I hope she finds peace, but I do not feel in any way a parent to her. I don't know her trauma, and will never know her trauma, in the same ways that she'll never know mine. I don't think she has malicious intent." The commenter replies, "Yes, you did, but when confronted about that several times, simply denied the misconstruction of the poor girl." Opie says, "I have empathy for her to a point. We all have the right to our boundaries being respected." Yeah, it seems to have turned into a controversial topic in the comments here, but I don't know, I'm finding it hard not to be on OP's side in all of this. Maybe I'm missing something. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Okay, Opie makes an update. As stated in responses to comments on my original post, I ended up writing my birth daughter another letter explaining to her the circumstances of her birth and why I don't want contact with her. I also included a few watercolours I did with my grandmother while I was pregnant with her, and an extensive packet of information regarding family medical history. I overnight FedExed it to the address I had for her. Sadly, in the late hours of last night, she showed up at my house again, this time while I was home, and pounded on my front door, screaming. My husband and I tried to ignore it, but we got a phone call from our neighbours that they would call the police if we didn't answer our door or handle the situation, and I honestly didn't want to start Christmas Eve with getting someone clearly going through the thick of it arrested. My husband spoke to her via our home doorbell and alarm system thing. When this did not placate her, I literally barricaded myself in our bathroom, and he went out the back door, locking it, and then around the front to speak to her. I could hear him screaming at her. Unpleasant, but apparently effective because she finally left. This morning I received a phone call from her adoptive parents apologising to me that they never fully disclosed how she was conceived and that they helped fund the PI, which is how she found me, hoping it would lead to a more happy reunion. What they did tell me they told her was that she was the result of an assault. What they lied to her about was that it was my parents who made me give her away, and that I always loved her, chose life, and wanted to keep her if I'd been older. All lies, and it seems she received a similar very religious upbringing that I did. I ended up agreeing to speak with her on the phone, facilitated by her birth parents. I'm assuming OP means adopted parents there. If she understood that now she has to leave me alone, or I'll pursue legal advice, and will not hesitate to call the police if she were to ever come to my home ever again. I was very blunt with her, because I felt that she's already been lied to 100 times. It probably would have been better to do the conversation through a therapist, but honestly, I'm just happy it's over. She asked me if I loved her as her daughter, the way I loved my children I'm pregnant with. I told her I have love for her as a human being, but that I would not lie and say I felt like a mother to her, that she's only 5 years younger than my own husband, and that I don't love her in any maternal way, but I do love for her as my sister in humanity. She asked me, do I wish I had an abortion? I said that at the time I wanted an abortion, that the trauma I felt would have been significantly reduced if I were allowed to terminate the pregnancy forced upon me by my assaulter. I also said I wouldn't go back and change what happened now because she already exists, and I would never wish away her existence. She asked me about my faith and if I'm still insert our very conservative religious background that I guess she shares, and I told her no, that I'm not even a Christian. She asked me about my political beliefs and if I support, quote, murdering babies. I said I'm 100% pro-choice, that I'm a socialist and an anti-capitalist, but that I don't think being conservative makes you a bad person. Not really related, but I felt the need to say it. We talked about other things for a bit, mostly her asking me, because if I'm being honest, I don't really care to ask her anything about herself. She asked me if I forgave her birth father and if I ever spoke to him, and if I would ever consider visiting him with her. I told her that I will never forgive him, that I don't subscribe to Christian ideas of having to forgive. When pressed further about information related to him, I told her to ask my parents for any further information and take the time to read the letter, the second one I wrote her. I provided her mother with contact information for my own parents. I'm hoping to close this chapter of my life. I can't imagine speaking with me gave her much peace, but I hope she's satisfied. My husband and I are now considering moving so that she can't find us again. I don't feel any better having spoken with her. If anything, I'm reassured about choosing never to see her in person. She seems like a broken person, and I hope she finds her own healing, but I do not want her as part of my life. She seems like the kind of person I wouldn't get along with and would never respect boundaries. I get that she has so much trauma of her own, and I hope that she is able to leave the religious community she belongs to, unless she's happy there. I don't feel guilty that her life wasn't everything it could have been. I do feel sympathy that she obviously has been raised in a similar toxic religious household. I'm glad this is over. I've disconnected my landline and I'm changing my cell phone number. I'm going to restart therapy at the beginning of next year, and if she ever shows up at my home again, I will be calling the police. Okay, now for a final comment discussion. One commenter says, "You did everything possible to help her while still keeping that boundary clear. I applaud you for that. I know this was very disruptive to your life and she had no right to it and obviously crossed the line multiple times. It makes a lot more sense now hearing about the involvement of the adoptive parents and how they've hurt the situation. They should have never ever told her those things, never crossed a line with the PI, and never encouraged her to keep pursuing this. It was completely inappropriate and entirely their fault, honestly. The girl is just acting in the way you would expect for her age and upbringing in the context of what she'd been told. I'm sure that as she gets older, she will think back to this and possibly read through everything you gave her multiple times. She will be able to process it and most likely be able to understand where you're coming from. She will appreciate the information and the honesty at some point. She just is a child, and everything that she'd ever thought about the situation and the possibilities of a relationship is completely wrong. That's a lot to stomach for anyone, let alone a kid. Try not to be angry with her about this. If anything, be angry at those parents. They are the ones responsible for putting her on this mission." Opie replies, "I'm not angry with her. I don't hate her. She's obviously a scared teenager in need of guidance, and I hope she finds the answers she's looking for." Is her birth father in prison? Did he ever get any kind of punishment? Also, I'm so sorry for everything that has happened. Being pregnant after a forced pregnancy is so hard. I was also pregnant after I was assaulted, and now that I'm pregnant again, I've noticed things being weird in my head. Opie replies, "He spent 16 years in prison. He assaulted 6 members of my family in 1 year, including myself. Being pregnant after having been pregnant from abuse is strange for sure. My pregnancies are nearly 2 decades apart, but it has brought back weird feelings. I literally chose this pregnancy. My husband and I used IVF, and sometimes I have to double think first thing in the morning of horror at reaction at my baby bump." Opie adds, "I'm now living in a hotel rather than staying in my house while I'm pregnant to avoid having to call the police on her. You're right in that. I don't know her. I don't feel overwhelming and hopefully warm love for her like a mother would, but I care about her as a person. I care for her in that I believe she deserves the very best life and answers to her questions and emotional support. I just can't be the one to provide it. I'm barely holding it together. I've done what I thought showed her respect while respecting myself. You have no right at all to ascribe intentions or feelings towards my actions." Another comment says, "The adoptive parents completely disregarded their promise made when adopting her, to keep her safe. Nothing they told her kept her emotionally safe, and even put her in potential physical danger by encouraging and facilitating the hiring of a private investigator, which is what led to these late-night door poundings and overly emotional decision-making. I'm so angry at them for OP and for her." OP replies, "They were unfair to her, and I'm angry with them for this reason, and not her. I'm so ticked they lied to her. I'm also a bit angry with my own parents because at the time of the adoption, I was told her parents were non-denominational Christians and not part of my parents' insane sect of Christianity." The commenter replies, "Wow, it just keeps getting worse. I'm really sorry. I'd be extremely angry with the adoptive parents as well. I might be more inclined to give my parents the benefit of the doubt and ask if they'd been lied to, as well, since the adoptive parents are obviously extremely dishonest, willing to tell reprehensible lies to their own child to avoid a difficult conversation. You mentioned that your parents have grown and changed immensely since this all happened. Would you be able to discuss this with them to get some answers and work towards closure? Perhaps once you're back in therapy and have guidance." Opie replies, "I genuinely thought her parents were good people, all my life, or at least all her life. It never crossed my mind they weren't. I would have fought harder for a better set of people had I known they were the same type of Christians as my parents. I'm definitely going to be speaking with my parents about this, with the facilitation of a mental health professional when given the chance. Honestly, my parents were such jerks and liars when I was a kid. They genuinely may not remember telling this specific lie. They are pretty awesome people now and have spent like 15 years working so hard to change. I obviously don't excuse their behaviour ever, but I do think they'll be open to talk about this and admit their part. If you're talking about speaking with her parents, I really don't think that's going to happen. One commenter adds, I just asked this some seconds ago. The parents who are allowed to be assaulted and rug swept it are more deserving of empathy, consideration than the poor girl, innocent in all of that mess? Come on. Opie replies, I know my parents. They raised me. They are far, far, far from perfect. I don't see them all the time, but I have an established relationship with them that spans 32 years. My biological child is a stranger to me. I don't know her. I don't know her intentions. I haven't spent hundreds of hours in therapy with her, over nearly 2 decades picking apart and rebuilding our relationship. She's now come to my home uninvited 3 times after I've asked her multiple times to leave me alone. She's stalked me at this point, and I've done nothing but try to be sympathetic to her. My parents aren't perfect people, but they've spent over a decade fundamentally reassessing who they are, what they believe, and the role they played in the traumatic childhood of my brother and I. They respect every boundary I ask of them nowadays. They know the part they played and own up to how effed up they were when I was a kid. And they are amazing parents to my much, much, much younger brother than they ever were to my brother and I. My relationship with my own parents isn't up for debate here. Just to make it clear, my parents absolutely never allowed myself or my brother to be assaulted. I never said they were more deserving of empathy than her. I don't think they are. Additionally, my parents, again, far from perfect, but did support my brother and myself, my maternal cousins, and my paternal aunt emotionally when we testified against our assaulter. And one last comment from OP. I was a child when I had her against my will. I begged my parents and then my grandmother to please not force me to give birth. I don't know what more could be asked of me. I made it clear I did not want contact with her. She pushed for contact, and I gave it to her. I'm not going to lie to her. Her adoptive parents have already done enough of that. I hope she heals. I hope she has a great life. I just don't want any part of it. Honestly, I hope she has a great relationship with her biological grandparents, my own parents, if that's what she wants. I hope she meets them, and I hope they give her the biological connection she craves. They are entirely different people they were when I was young, and I can honestly say they're good people now. I would not classify them as good parents when I was growing up, but decades and a lot of therapy can change things. I hope she finds joy. I hope she finds peace. Okie dokie folks, and that's the end of that story. Wow, what a roller coaster. But yeah, I think we can all agree that in this situation, a lot of the problems stemmed from the adoptive parents telling, the child lies about her biological family. Like, I don't know what would drive them to do that, other than like what Opie said, to avoid a difficult conversation. Let's read a few final comments. I've seen childbirth, and frankly I think anyone who would force a 12-year-old kid to suffer through having her tiny body ripped apart and permanently changed by it deserves all of the pain it's possible to suffer. Sometimes you read a post on this subreddit and it's just a gut punch. Forcing your minor child to carry an unwanted pregnancy to term is frickin' child abuse, and I only wish the law saw it as such. I'm amazed at how much crap these commenters are giving to someone who was assaulted at 12 years of age. Yeah, I thought the same thing in the original post. I even commented on it. But yeah, it seems, regardless of what the parents did, which was obviously really messed up, Opie seems to have made amends with them. God knows how that happened. Anyway, let's leave that one there. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below, and we'll jump to another story. Okay, we're going to do a quick one from Petty Revenge to lighten the mood a little bit. This one was written by user It'sFish20, and it's titled, Landscaper kept blocking my driveway, so now he has to walk over a block from his truck. My neighbour directly across the street has his yard serviced every Wednesday morning around 7:30, right at the time I'm leaving to drop off my kid at daycare and drive to work. I've had to get out of my car, go find the guy in the yard across the street, and have him move his truck so I can leave now at least 4 times since April. I decided that I was done with this dance and decided to park my wife's car on the street where the landscaper parks his truck on Tuesday nights, so come Wednesday morning he wouldn't be able to block my driveway. We also live on a street that you can only park on one side of, and the police here ticket very quickly if they see you're parked on the wrong side. I also have a fire hydrant in front of my house, and my neighbour to the north of me parks his truck on the street. So with all that, the landscaper and his big-ass truck and trailer now need to park over a block away and bring all his equipment with him in multiple trips. Yeah, serves him right. What's with blokes in these big trucks feeling entitled to parking their cars on people's driveways? They all need a reality check like this guy. Anyway, that's it from me today. I hope you guys enjoyed those stories. Thanks for making it to the end, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a good day. Cheers.